Okay, I'm just setting up the live stream. I won't be long. Okay. Let's go and jump inside the airplane and make sure before we get started that the airplane's in good condition, because I'm not sure what sort of state it's in. So let's go and close the door to begin with. We have to pull up the Okay, I'm just going to make sure that I'm hearing things through the headphones. And make sure I've got the correct control configuration before we get started. So I think I've got a configuration specifically for the TBM 850 actually. There it was. No, that's the 350. TBM 850, there it is. Go back, resume. So let's see what we've got. So we've got the propeller and the power, and that has got reverse on it. So I need to lock that. Okay. So let's go and run through the startup checklist and then program the route in. We're going to be using the TDS GTNXI GPS unit. Let's just check the volume levels as well so you can hear me fine. That's good. Okay, so overhead. We're going to go and lift the crash lever, as they call it, and then put the generator on main and the source on bat. And then oxygen goes to on. Actually, no, passenger oxygen we don't need to worry about. We just put the oxygen here because we're not carrying any passengers, not that I'm aware of anyway. And then the radio master goes to on or up. So that's down here. Fuel selector can go to auto. External lights, which are overhead. Nav light can come on. Before we go any further, I just want to go and go past the status screens into the GPS. I just want to check what sort of state the airplane's in. So it's 100%. We'll refill the oxygen before we go.
System test OK.
And the TDS has done its system test. The crash lever, ominous name. It's in the live stream chat. It's true. It is ominous. So where did we get to? Fuel selector and nav are done. So then we're going to start the engines. So propeller goes to max. Auxiliary boost pump goes to auto. Ignition goes to auto. Starter can go to on. Then we come down and we monitor the gauges. We're looking at the NG gauge. When it gets to 13%, so we keep an eye on it. And while we're doing that, we can clear the cautions. So it's just gone through 13%. So we introduce fuel. At 50%, which it's going to go through very soon, there's the 50% mark, we can go and turn the starter off. And the fuel condition can go to high idle. Okay, so back overhead, we can go and turn all of the gyros on. And down here, if we get the yoke out of the way for the moment, we can put the inertial separator on. we can go and turn the EFIS master switch on. We can set our initial climb altitude as well. So for the first part of the flight, I think we only need to climb to a couple of thousand feet. We're going to calibrate the altimeter while we're here as well. Do that. Actually, let's go to 5,000 for our first climb. So, in the EFIS So I've done EFIS, sorry, I'm losing my own place. On the ECS section, bleed can go to auto for the environmental control system. The air conditioning can go to on. And the cabin climb rate, I don't think we need to really worry about that, but we can go and set that to up. It's just if we go to higher altitude, we can go faster. So we're going to go and put the transponder on standby. It's already on standby. Put the AP master to on. Weather radar can go on, it's already on, that's good. So then overhead we can go and put the taxi light on. Flaps as required. We have got a short takeoff here, so we're going to go to takeoff flaps. And then de-icing, we're going to go and put the, well, we'll do the pitot when we get to the runway. Oh, actually, let's just do them now because it will stop the system complaining at us. So we just got the inertial separator on now. So we're just about to clout the guy with the trolley on the head with the wing. So we need to turn, do a 270-degree turn to the left to go for runway 31 for takeoff for the wind. So we're going to backtrack along this runway. It's only a short runway. Yeah, you can see there's a windsock there and it's very clearly showing which way the wind's coming from. So we're going to go back down to this end. And we'll run up full power on the wheel brakes before we go. Hopefully get enough speed. Actually, I haven't programmed the route at all yet. But we could do that while we're en route. We'll have plenty of time. I haven't checked the fuel either. How much fuel? I think this aircraft remembers things, so I'm just going to put the parking brake on briefly. Where are we? So let's just check the condition of things around the cockpit. So engine's good, vertical speed's good, prop torque is good. We've got a warning, that's because we're sat here on the parking brake cooking the engine. So we've got about half full of fuel. That's probably not going to get us there. Let's go and take this up to 75% full. We've got no co-pilot, that's fine. Okay. So we can at least get the heading pointing the way we're going on the heading bug. Can we do the same thing? No, the course won't do the same for us, which is a bit of a shame. Because we're on GPS mode, obviously. Let's get rid of the messages. Keep an eye on the torque. Try not to go over 100%, or not for too long. And rotate. Gear up. We've got a morning flight along the coast of Turkey coming up. So inertial separator can come off. Circle around, we can see what the island where we've just taken off from. Kastelorizo. So there's this tiny little airfield we've been parked on for the last few days. So we're coming round to face east, which is good. So we'll level out, we'll set the heading bug. We'll go for heading mode on the autopilot and engage it. So it's using the climb rate at the point at which we engaged it, and we can control that with the autopilot trim controls. Having a look around, make sure everything's okay in the aeroplane before we go too much further, and then we'll program some of the routing. So altitude hold should come in on its own. Coming up to 4,000 feet. We never put the transponder on, did we? Let's go do that now. So let's see if this is going to wind out the vertical speed as we approach 5,000. It should. Yeah, it's doing it. Or it looks like it's going to. So now we've finished climbing. We'll pull the propeller back a little bit. Let's keep an eye on that torque. Just have a look. I was running the engine a little bit high there, but it's got away with it. It hasn't damaged it. So we're pushing the engine quite hard. Right, shall we go and program the route then? Now we're on our way. So let's go and show you where we are. So we're just cutting across the coast here, which gives us something nice to look at. We're going to pass by Demra, which is where St. Nicholas is buried. And then we'll carry on up to Antalya. So we want about a 20 or 30 degree turn, don't we? Okay, while we're waiting for that, let's go back into flight plan then. Add a waypoint. So we departed from Kastelorizo, Lima Golf, Kilo Juliet. And the next waypoint on our route is the Antalya VOA, which is AYT or Alpha Yankee Tango. And then on to Mike Uniform Tango. So it's the one in Turkey, not the one in France. Then Adana, Alpha Delta Alpha. And again, it's the one in Turkey. Then on to Hatay, HTY or Hotel Tango Yankee Enter. Then on to Aleppo, Alpha Lima Echo. And then Deir Zor, so Delta Romeo Zulu. Just before we go too much further, let's have a look outside. So, I forget exactly where it is. I think it's here. There's an old church. Oh, it might be here. It's a while since I've been back. I think it's here. There's an old church in the trees. And it's the final resting place of St. Nicholas of Bari, which is the historical figure that gives rise to St. Nicholas, or Father Christmas. His various names he's known as throughout the world. So following Deir Zor, we're going to Baghdad, BGD. Not quite made my mind up where we are going to land yet. So, on the live stream comment, someone's asking, have I seen the FSS 727 yet? Nope, only the professional pilots have seen it as far as I'm aware. So, having put that much of the route in, we can come in and you can see there's our route off to one side of us, so we'll go and rejoin it. So obviously the course indicator on the HSI when it's in GPS mode will show you the angle of the course. Obviously we're to the right of it, which the CDI is showing there, the course deviation indicator. So now we are on an intercept course. If I was to say nav, it will cut in itself, look. So let's go and put ourselves at a bit higher altitude to clear these mountains. So if we arm that, then it's asking for vertical speed, and we can tell it we'll want to climb at 1,000 feet a minute, please. And it should look after that for us, up to 7,500. And you can see it's aiming for 1,000 feet a minute there on the vertical speed now. We might have to go a bit higher than that though, we'll see. Let's have a look on LittleNavMap and pull up the... yeah, so we're going to need 10,000 feet. Or 10.5. That's fine. So we may need then to go and look at this on the cabin altitude. So, oh no, that only kicks in at 14, that's fine. Okay, so let's keep an eye on temperatures as well. So, I can never remember where this is on the different aeroplanes. So I'm just looking for the internal cabin temperature. Ah, here we go. Oh, that's the outside air temperature, sorry. So it's nice and warm outside actually, but it's obviously going to get colder the higher we get. So I'll leave it on centigrade. Is the outside air temperature on the other side somewhere? Yeah, there it is. Oh no, that's cabin temperature again. Oh, sorry, no, that's cabin. That's outside behind here. Okay. So cabin and outside, okay. So 22 centigrade, yeah, we've got nothing to worry about. So we're busy climbing over the mountains of southwestern Turkey. And we're flying towards Antalya, so we're just going up to join the route between the VOR stations. If we go and align the heading bug with the course, when we get a bit closer to the course you'll see the CDI sweep in. It started moving already, I think. Not yet. Go and have a look around out the window while we're climbing. Okay, so you can see the CDI is coming in and the aeroplane is banking right to join the route. So we've got the flight directors on so you can see the guidance here that it's following, where it's almost pixel perfect on it. That's amazing, isn't it? So yeah, if you watch it for a while as it levels out, you'll see the triangles twisting backwards, telling the aeroplane you need to start banking left to level out. But it does it so gently, it's untrue. So coming up towards 9,000 feet. So we're just about going to clear these hills. Let's just keep an eye. As we're getting higher in the sky, we can put more power down usually because the air is obviously getting thinner. But we'll see. So let's go and tune the VOR station that we're heading towards. So it's 11400. Obviously we're not using it at the moment, but it at least will give us the information should we want to use it later on. We could play around with the KNS80, sorry. Actually, that would be good fun because it has nothing to do with navigation in terms of the automated systems. So if we put this on 11400, we should get the data. There we go, 32 miles to run. So that's quite nice. We can use this as just a reference system to triangulate if we wish to along the way. And we could use VOR2 as well if we wanted to. So just for a bit of fun to visualize that as well. So if we go and put this round to 11400 on nav2, so you'll see VOR2 has come up. So we'll spin the omni-bearing select around to align the CDI, and it will tell us, hopefully fairly accurately, what's going on. Very cool. We've also got ADF over here. I don't know if we've got a needle for ADF to point in the direction. This has obviously got VOR 1 and 2 down here. Yeah, look, that outside air temperature has really dropped off. We put the ECS on auto, remember? So we're holding steady at 22 centigrade in the cockpit. So yeah, just reading the live stream comments are saying, why aren't I using the VORs if I can? And I may well switch over. So you can see at the moment we're flying straight towards that. So if we go to heading mode first. So we've lined up the heading with the course. So we're on heading mode. So let's go and switch the CDI mode over to VLOC. See, this is why I didn't do it straight away, because we need to go and change the course to match the direction we're actually going, or the radial we wish to be on, going into the VOR. So we'll do that, and notice it's wavering around. That's interference being modelled. So the GTN, what's this aircraft called again? TBM 850 actually models that. So if we go back to nav mode now we're in VLOC mode. The aeroplane will slightly go to the right, but we're following VOR navigation rather than GPS. So we're following the radial, the course, and the frequency. Let's have a look out the window while we have some time to do so. It'll be interesting once we get out over the Middle East to see what the textures are like. I've not flown much around that part of the world, so doing this round the world trip is going to be interesting to see the textures out, out in the desert and see how it's modelled. It'd be quite interesting. So you can see this is wavering a little bit on the GPS signal, and this has just thrown the bug at us with the engine. So following the last sim update, you sometimes lose power. If you have an aircraft with an auto throttle, it doesn't suffer from it, but this one doesn't have an auto throttle, so I do have to keep on top of it. So we got the propeller just inside. Let's see what happens if we cut the propeller back a bit. Do we actually accelerate? It's not always as intuitive as you might think in terms of grabbing the air with the propeller. Sometimes slowing the propeller down, depending on the atmospheric conditions, you can actually accelerate. You have to be careful though, look, the torque is going through the roof while we slow the propeller down. It's a bit quieter, isn't it? And with no appreciable difference to airspeed. So it's funny, you talk to some of the turboprop pilots and they say, yeah, the propeller control is really your volume control. Always makes me laugh when they say that. It's quite dramatic down there, isn't it? So I think we've gone over the highest part of the route, so we could start descending. Oh, actually, no, not yet. We'll hang on. So after passing over Antalya, we've got to cross these mountains. Yeah, so if you look here with the mouse, you can see the circle moving on the map. So should we pull open... just get rid of this. Let's go and pull open Navigraph as well. And we'll do a new flight. And we'll come into LittleNavMap. We'll copy the flight plan description and paste it into here and just make a slight modification to it. So yeah, it doesn't... it's got that waypoint wrong, hasn't it? So does that mean they haven't actually got the Baghdad VOR? Oh my word. That's amazing. So it's got the wrong one. Remove. So it would appear Navigraph doesn't have this part of the world modelled very well. That's a shame. So if we put this on the VFR map... No, there is the Baghdad VOR. I just picked the wrong one, didn't it? Add to route. After the DRZ waypoint. There we go. So yeah, when we get to Baghdad, it's going to be decision time, because we really have no business landing an 850 at an international airport, but we can figure that out on the way. So we're flying in towards Antalya, so you can see the city. It's a huge city, look. So we're doing about just over 200 knots indicated. Actual ground speed will be faster than that. So yeah, 240 knots ground speed. So we are shifting. So if we were to lower the propeller speed even more, so it seems to be happiest just about there. Running the torque quite high. Okay. So we should just be passing over the Antalya VOR at any time soon. So we need to change our course that we're flying on. So our exit course from here should be 86 degrees. So let's go and change our course now. So notice it's turning left is because we are not at the VOR yet. So it will suddenly snap back right. So what it's trying to do is get to the 86 degree radial before we get there. And now it's going to overshoot because it's pretty dumb about doing such things. So humans can still beat computers at some things. So if you watch, it's now gone on to the next leg and it will just line up on the from course of 86 degrees from the VOR. So you can see it's going to continue turning right because the CDI has gone away, but the CDI is coming in just as quickly because we're right over the top of it almost. This is where it can almost make more sense when you're making the change of direction to just put it into heading mode, and otherwise it's going to fishtail around like this. Yeah, so what we'll do is just snap the heading mode back, put it on a very slight intercept course and just go heading mode. And then when we're in the ballpark, we'll go back to nav mode. Yeah, so humans are far better at anticipating things like this. Obviously the big jets have got far more clever systems that can project, you know, the turning circle. and it would have done on GPS. But because we're on radio navigation, we gave it some spurious instructions to be on a particular radial, and then it was playing catch up from then on. So CDI is coming in. So what we could do is prepare the next frequency for the next VOR on our route, which is going to be right the way across these mountains. We might not pick it up yet. 11230. So let's see if we can pick it up on the other radios. Not yet. So what's the range on this one? 50 miles. Yeah, we're not going to see it yet. So we could draw this on the map to see where we're going to be. So we want to add range rings. We want a 50-mile ring around VOR. Yeah, so we've got ages to go yet. So when we are measure distance from Antalya to here, when we're about 70 miles from Antalya, then we should start to pick up the Mutt VOR. So let's go and put this on nav mode now, so it will stay on the radial for us. And we're on our way. The mountains of southwestern Turkey are absolutely gorgeous, aren't they? So we're at 10,500 feet. We're staying up here because we're anticipating some peaks as we pass through. So the range on the Antalya VOR, let's go and find out. Show information. The range is 130 miles, so that will be good for more than the distance to Mutt. Okay. We can see the distance measuring equipment on the HSI for Nav1 net. And we can switch this between different radios, but you probably want to put it in heading mode before you start playing games with that, because obviously you could put this into RNAV mode and then you use the KNS80, in which case you can start to play funny games with projecting VORs into different places. Should we have a look from outside? So this is doing fuel selection automatically. So you'll see the left and right tanks swapping over along the route, taking over from one another. Obviously got no weather to see because there's nothing out there, it's just a little bit of mist today. So at the moment, just as a bit of a recap, we are using we're using VLOC mode on the guidance systems, which means it's using the radio frequency, and we're tuned into the Antalya VOR, which is behind us now, which is why the white arrow is behind the aeroplane, and why the distance measuring is increasing. So we should be good out to 100 miles at least away from Antalya. But obviously once we cross over these mountains, let's get the map up, we may lose sight of it, depending on how low we are over the peaks, so we could lose the signal. But luckily, if we just carry on this course, obviously if we use GPS this isn't an issue, but just for the radio navigation exercise, yeah, if we wanted to, if we start to pick up the signal from the MUT VOR, obviously we can switch over to it. But we could cheat and just use GPS. I think it's just interesting as an academic exercise to play around with the radio beacons. So we're coming up for 29 miles away from Antalya now. We're holding just above 200 knots indicated airspeed. We're flying along, aren't we? What was the transition altitude around here? I didn't actually check. Let's go and pick a nearby airfield. So let's go for Antalya International and go for the weather here. So actually pull up the charts, that will give us the transition altitude, won't it? So if we look at the standard instrument departure, any of them will do. He says famous last words. 15,000, okay. So we are doing the right thing, leaving this on the local barometric pressure. Although typically, if flying into and out of sectors, if you had air traffic control, they would tell you the barometric pressure for the local sector. Okay, should we zoom out a bit on this so we can see the next wave coming? There's the MUT VOR coming. So 20 minutes until we get there. 86 miles out. So if you're wondering what this line is that's drawn around the aeroplane on the Garmin, the TDS version of the Garmin, which is the real one effectively, this is based on your aircraft type. If you have programmed the parameters incorrectly, which I haven't, it will give you your glide range if you were to experience an engine failure. But it relies on having programmed the parameters in, which you can do. So in here, if I come back out of here, you can go into system and utilities and set everything up. So there's tons and tons of menus in the back end of this thing. Okay, sorry, I was very zoomed in there, weren't we? So you can see these hills are coming up to meet us. As we get further from the coast, we're going further towards this ridge line in front of us, which you can see on the map is across here. Hopefully we're high enough. It's not really a concern because the TBM 850 can fly up to about 30,000 feet, I think. It's a very, very good aircraft. So how are we doing on the engine? Still just inside 100% on the torque. It's a bit too close for my liking. Just going to edge the torque needle back away. We've got the propeller slowed down quite a bit. We're holding just above 200 knots as we have been all along so far. We've got a slight crosswind. There's hardly any wind around, to be honest. It's quite amazing. On our way to the MUT VOR and then off to Adana. So the route today takes us through Adana, so then over the border into Syria, flying straight across the top of Syria. So this is where I'm going to be fascinated to see what the scenery looks like out here, because I've never been over this part of the world in the sim. and then we'll come into, after a fairly long leg, into Iraq. So we're going to go to Baghdad area, but I'm wondering where we should really land a small aeroplane. I'm wondering somewhere like this. So if we were to append that onto the flight plan, and we fly outside of Baghdad, obviously we'll have a look at Baghdad, but we'll fly out to this little airfield, which is much more in keeping with the small aircraft, other than the air bases and things that exist around Baghdad otherwise. There's this Rashid airfield as well. I'm not sure. I think it might be fun to go and find a smaller one. Anyway, that's several hours away yet. Hello, sim is just frozen. Give it a second. I wonder if it will kill the throttle when it comes back. Yep. Let's just keep an eye on the torque. Make sure it doesn't go and over torque the engine. And it has, look. Need to be so careful. That's almost an argument for running the propeller a bit higher, so I won't over torque the engine so easily. Okay, so we're looking like we're going to get actually quite close to some of these peaks. Should we have a scoot around the aeroplane and have a look out the window? I think we'll be okay. It's looking okay. Famous last words. Almost past the worst of it now. Having said that, it's very rugged down here, isn't it? If we had an engine failure, it's difficult to know where we'd go. I guess you just chase to the bottom of one of the valleys, don't you? Glide as far as you can and try to spot either a riverbed or something like that. Yeah, so there's a road, look. So if in the worst case scenario, if we did have to go and ditch, you'd go and fly for the straightest, flattest part of a road you could find. Isn't it amazing, look, how that landscape has suddenly changed as soon as we got away from the peaks. Suddenly a lot more verdant out here. Got trees and grass. It's almost like an oasis. So Cool Genius is saying, what is my graphics card? It's a NVIDIA 3080 RTX. A bit later in the year I'm upgrading to something better, but for the moment it just about cuts it running Ultra on Flight Sim. But in anticipation of Flight Sim 2024, I am upgrading to a newer computer later in the year. So I've been saving for quite some time, squirreling money away into a savings account, ready to do it. I'm not looking forward to reinstalling. I really am not. So, Nev Haycox is also circumnavigating the world using the Cessna 414. Landed today at Karachi, Pakistan. See, I'm switching aeroplane every so often. The only reason I'm doing this leg in the 850 is because it's so quick in a straight line. Like I said, we're doing 250 knots over the ground, which is pretty stunning, really. Okay, so we are coming up for 70 nautical miles away from that VOR. We still haven't got a signal. We're just getting to the point where we should pick up a signal from the next one. So let's go and change this to 1123 on nav2. I'm waiting for this needle to spin. Oh, that's showing VOR and ADF. Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, at the moment, it hasn't lit up saying 2, so this has got no signal at the moment. And you'd expect it to be about 90 degrees, wouldn't you? Thereabouts. It's just woken up, look. Oh, we lost the signal again. Briefly, we had a signal. There it goes, it's just come back on. 47 miles out. So let's go and switch over then on nav 1. Now we have a signal. So we want 11230. Transfer. And it's just lit up, and there it goes. So if we set the course to go straight for the VOR, so we're looking at just about 90 degrees, isn't it? And then we'll go to nav mode on the autopilot, which will make it chase it. We can set the heading bug as well. So we've got 43 miles and counting down now, so we're heading towards the Mutt VOR. Very good. So the old-fashioned way of doing this kind of navigation is you would pick, although you can't really do it easily around here, what's the range on... Yeah, there is a VOR over here, as well as the TechCam. That's only got a 40-mile range, that's no good to us. But you'd be looking to triangulate, basically. And we can't do that on this route along here. We're having to go hopping between VORs, so there's nothing to triangulate with that's long enough range, unless this has, of course. So what range does this VOR have? 130 miles, we could use it, so 11700. So I can show you the idea of how you do it. So let's get this back under control. So we said that was a 11700. So what we could do on nav2 is put in 117. Switch it to active. So it's come alive. So what we can do is, we know it's south of us, yeah? Whoops, so let's, I'm going to turn off head tracking a moment. So we know that that's the angle to it from us. We actually want the reciprocal though, to make this easy to think about. So when we get the needle in the middle, the omni-bearing selector will be telling us the direction from the VOR to us, so about 335 degrees. So if we were then to look on a map and draw a line at 335 degrees, we're about there. Now, it's not an exact science because it's radio beacons. Yeah, but as long as you know where you are on one route, you can then triangulate with another, and you can figure out where you are. Or to a ballpark anyway. I have done a few videos in the past just playing with that method of navigating. It's good fun. Where all you've got is so you turn off your location on LittleNavMap, so you turn the airplane off, and then you leave markers on the map of where you have been at certain times, and then you can figure out where you are in the world without seeing yourself on a map, so without using GPS. It's a great exercise to do with the older aeroplanes. So just turn your location off in LittleNavMap, turn off the dotted line, and use map skills and navigation, radio navigation skills to figure out where you are and where you're going. It's amazing scenery around here, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to go make a coffee, and while I do that, I'm going to cheat slightly and put this onto GPS mode. So changing mode here, notice, has switched off nav, so you have to go and switch it back, and now it will go and align itself with the GPS route. How are we doing in terms of the vertical profile? So we could drop back down now to 8,000 feet. It's not going to be a problem. So we arm 8,000, then we command the rate to come down at. So we can say 1,000 feet a minute, that's fine, and it's on its way. So the aeroplane is just banking gently left to get back onto the GPS track. Obviously we've still got the distance measuring equipment on the radio beacon working nicely, so we're 22.5 miles away from Mutt. Okay, so as we descend, I'll put ourselves on an outside view so you've got something to watch while I go and grab a coffee and stretch my legs a little bit. See you in a minute. Right, I'm back. I have coffee. Everything is good in the world again. Let's go and have a look around and make sure everything's okay. Engine looks fine, well within parameters on torque and propeller. We're down to 8,000 feet now. And we're counting down. Obviously now we're in GPS mode. You can see the we're just counting down to the next waypoint, and it zooms in automatically on the TDS GTN XI. So we zoom out on purpose. But you'll see it zoom out anyway. As we cross over the VOR, it will show the whole of the next leg to give you an idea of what's coming. So let's center up the head tracking and switch it back on. Back on to show the altitude we have chosen, and it complies, or agrees I should say, with the altimeter, which is always good. "30 seconds to go till we get to the waypoint." Let's have a look out the window. There's quite a lot of houses down there, aren't there? Quite remote out here though. Surprising. So this is where the landscape's going to get interesting to me, because I've never flown out over this part of the world. So you're starting to see the dunes. Look, it's quite cool, isn't it? It's very barren. Okay, so this is just selected, look, to show you the route ahead. So we've got the Mediterranean off to the south of us. So we're looking on a wider map. We're still over Turkey. Turkey's a huge country. If you look at the size of Turkey compared to Syria or Iraq, or Iran is obviously a little bit bigger. But considering, if you compare it against the rest of Western Europe, France, Germany, Spain, they're nowhere near as big as Turkey. Poland isn't as big. Belarus, Ukraine is similar. So it's interesting, isn't it, just to think how big Ukraine actually is. It's enormous. And then obviously you zoom out further and you can see Russia is gigantic. So much bigger than the United States or Canada, or it's absolutely huge. But within Russia there are obviously lots of smaller areas which were the former USSR states then, if you want to call them that. Slowly shedding them over the years, but I'm not going to get into politics on here. This is all about aeroplanes. So, yeah, people are saying it would look different on a globe. Not so different, because we've got it in the middle of our view. We can put it onto a spherical projection within here. I'm just trying to remember where it is to do it. There we go, spherical projection. So, yeah, it's not so different. But even so, Russia is still gigantic and absolutely dwarfs any of the rest of Europe, any of the African countries, or North America. Oh, sorry, not North America, United States at least. But Canada is similarly big, but it's not as, doesn't have the volume that Russia does, I guess, if you want to put it that way, or the area, sorry, not volume. But again, China is big, but nothing compared to the size of Russia. But it's kind of wrong historically to think of Russia as one country, because it's kind of a how would you put it? a constellation of many smaller countries that have joined together throughout history to become one. It's always interesting. You see different people from different parts of Russia look very different to each other because they have different races in their ancestry. You know, entirely different races and cultures. Which is no surprise because it's just such a vast country. Okay, so we are on our way to Adana. We're out over this really barren area of landscape, but it's kind of got a beauty all of its own, hasn't it? Yeah, getting back to the projection methods in LittleNavMap, if you put this back, it goes a little bit blurry when you put it on spherical projection. So, where did we find it? I can never remember where these things are. View, map, tools. No, it was in the globe menu, wasn't it? There we go, Mercator projection. Mercator projection really only falls down when you get to the top of the map. And this has got some level of correction for it. But yeah, it's like you see, there we go, Antarctica, look. It's nowhere near as big as it looks on the map. Because this is stretched so badly once you get up to the ends of the map. But around this kind of central band, it's going to look broadly correct. Okay, so we can start looking at descending a bit further. We'll wait a little while until we're just clear of some. So let's bring ourselves down another 1,000 feet maybe, or a couple of thousand feet. So we'll arm that and tell it to come down at 500 feet a minute. It's so different, isn't it, to the landscapes we see in Western Europe. Yeah, so just reading the live stream comments, of course Greenland on a Mercator projection map, because it's so far north, is massively affected by the distortion in the projection method. Of course, this all depends on you believing if the world is round or flat, doesn't it? We all know it's circular, don't we? Balanced on the back of an enormous... No, balanced on the back of, is it 4 elephants? Perched on the back of a huge turtle as it flies through space? Something like that. Anybody who's read the Discworld books will be smiling at by now. Was it called the Greater Chewin, isn't it? The spacefaring turtle that underpins the world. If anybody hasn't read the Discworld books, I can't recommend them enough. They're absolutely brilliant. Terry Pratchett was such an amazing author. His sense of humour was just next level. So we're within 1,000 feet of our target altitude. We're obviously not going to clear those hills, though, are we? If I come down a little bit early here. Yeah, yes I have. Oh dear. So let's go and stop this descent. let's go and command and get back up to 7,000, please. At least for the moment. And maybe we'll go manual just over this hill. Or maybe we'll go and command 8,000 even. At 1,500 feet. Yeah, let's just get over the top of this hill. That was my own lack of forethought going on there. At least you're seeing how to control the altitude pre-selector. So for anybody that is wondering what on earth we're talking about with Discworld, is that there are a series of fantasy novels by an author called Terry Pratchett. He died about 10 years ago now, something like that. But he had a wonderful, wonderful sense of humour. So he picked on elements of the world we all know and kind of made fun of it in a gentle way, at the silliness of everything. I think one of the stories that stuck with me, I think it's in the first book. They have the first tourist that visits the Discworld, and he happens to be an insurance salesman, but they've never heard of insurance, they don't know what it is, so he explains it to them while he's sitting in the pub with them. And he says, okay, I'm going to bet you that your pub that you love is going to burn down, and you're going to bet me that it's not going to burn down. And that's insurance. And it's the best description of insurance I've ever heard. Unfortunately, following that, most of the capital city in their world was burnt to the ground by arson attacks of people who had been laying wagers on if it was going to burn down or not. But again, that's the humour I'm talking about. So clever. So whereabouts are we in the world? So there are place names out here in the middle of nowhere, but they're obviously tiny little settlements. So Toros, Sorgan, Hasialani, Sarila, Findik Pinari, Demerisic. Isn't it interesting how if you don't see the letter combinations commonly in your own language, they become very difficult to pick apart in your head while you're reading. Okay, so following this next hill, we should, you can see it here, look, it suddenly goes flat afterwards. And we've got some sectors there as well around Ada, so let's go and see what the sectors are for. Oh, Adana, it's an Air Force base, isn't it? And there's the Incirlik, is that Incirlik or Incirlik Air Base? So I imagine they must be firing ranges out there, I guess. Some of these sectors, why else would that be done like that? There's probably live fire areas or something like that. Without having a proper sector map of the area, you can't really say. I wonder if Navigraph has got anything on it. So if we get rid of that and come over here, so it's got the sectors drawn in, but will it tell us anything about them? Not really. There was one off the coast as well, wasn't there? I wonder if we went to an IFR map, if it would give us anything more. Ground to 3,000 feet. I think they're just controlled sectors, to be honest, near the airfield, so they probably do live fire out here or something. I'm sure if I pull up a browser, just turn head tracking off so you don't see me craning across the map. Let's look up Incirlik. Incirlik Air Base. The primary, what does it say? Turkish Air Base, slightly more than 1,300 hectares, located in the Incirlik quarter of the city of Adana, Turkey. Blah, 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 blah. History. The decision to build the airbase was made during the Second Cairo Conference in December 1943. Construction only began after the end of the Second World War. The US Army Corps of Engineers began the work in the spring of 1951. They had initially planned to use the base as an emergency staging and recovery site for medium and heavy bombers. The Turkish General Staff and the US Air Force signed a joint use agreement for the new base in December 1954. In February 1955, it was officially named Adana Air Base, with the 7,216th Air Base Squadron as the host unit, or the 7216th. The airbase was renamed the Incirlik Air Base on the 28th of February 1958. So it's done reconnaissance missions, basically. U-2s were based there for a long time. It's also had a composite strike force, as it's described. It had F-100 Super Sabres, B-57 Canberras, F-101 Voodoos and B-66 destroyers based there, along with supporting WB-66 weather planes. So, yeah, there was a task force there during a political problem years ago. So if we put these sectors on in LittleNavMap, we should see them. There they go. If we click inside one of these sectors in LittleNavMap, it will tell us all about it. They don't often tell you, though, why they are there, which is a bit of a problem. So it's a training area, 0 to 2,000 feet. So they're just training areas. You would imagine, with it being kind of fairly sparsely populated out here, that they drop all sorts of munitions. So can we descend now? Yes, we can. So we're going to go and take us down to 4,000 feet, or 3,000 feet even. And let's come down fairly rapidly. And we'll pull the power back. We don't want to overspeed the airframe, so we're holding speed just about. Well, it's just to put a little bit more power back in. So we're descending 2,000 feet a minute to 3,000 feet. And if we look ahead of ourselves, we can see a fairly major city coming, which is Tarsus. So let's have a read about Tarsus, shall we? See if I can manipulate my computer quickly enough to find this out. A city in Turkey called Tarsus, that's the one we want. History going back over 6,000 years, Tarsus has long been an important stop. Let's do this from outside. So Tarsus has long been an important stop for traders and the focal point of many civilizations. During the Roman Empire, it was the capital of the province of Cilicia. It was the scene of the first meeting between Mark Antony and Cleopatra and the birthplace of Paul the Apostle. So let's do this from inside. So the ancient name Tarsus is derived from Tarsa, the original name given to the city by the Hittites, who were among the earliest settlers of the region. Let's have a look at the history. There's obviously it's Wikipedia, and there's, given it is such a significant city in history, it has a lot of information. So I'm not going to read all of it, but I think you've got the gist of it. It's an ancient city. In its history, to flatter Julius Caesar, it was briefly named Juliopolis. Won't let me easily see behind me, so I'll have to do it this way. It's a big city, isn't it? Okay, so we are coming up to the Adana VOR very shortly. There's a lot of farmland down this way, isn't there? Let's open the throttle back up. Now we're at 3,000 feet. Get some speed back on. There we go. How are we doing for fuel? Haven't checked it for a while. No, we're doing fine. So Daily Detox is saying, what graphics card do I run? I get this question about every half an hour, I don't know, when I live stream. It's an NVIDIA 3080 RTX. If you look in the notes of all of my videos, the specs of my machine are listed at the bottom of the notes on each video. It's worth saying, no matter what I do with broadcasting it, it doesn't come through to you from OBS as smoothly as I see it. Even though I have fiber to the house, it drops frames in OBS somewhere along the way. So where you might see occasional stutters, I don't see them. So yeah, I think it's just the stress of streaming it. I think the professional streamers have a second machine purely to run, you know, that intercepts the HDMI signal and the sound. Obviously I'm not a professional streamer. So there's, I guess that's Adana Air Base that we can see just coming on the left. Yeah, it is. The big long runway over there. So Daily Detox has said, have I made a settings video? I don't need to. Everything's on default settings. I've set Ultra in the graphics card settings. I am only rendering at 1080p, mind. And I'm sending it out from OBS in 1080p. That's probably part of the reason it's so smooth. So a lot of people have gigantic monitors and run at 4K. I don't. I run at 1080p purely because I send it out at 1080p to YouTube. So there's no point doing anything different. If I was to, at some point in the future, switch to sending 4K to YouTube, that story would obviously change. And it may do later this year, because I am buying a new machine. I was talking about this earlier, so I'm not going to go on and on about it. So someone's saying, are you going to use this as a streaming PC? I don't know. I may sell it because there's a lot of money wrapped up in this in the hardware. So I had a quick look, and for a fairly beefy PC with a 3080 graphics card, they still go for about 1,000 second hand, which would recoup quite a lot of the cost of buying a new machine. So obviously I'm talking in terms of sterling, not dollars, but I'm looking at probably about 3,000 for something running an RTX 4090 and a fast CPU. And it'll be purely for running Flight Sim 2024 on. That's the only thing it's ever going to be used for. And it'll have NVMe storage, so it'll be quick. But I'm not going to buy it until later in the year, and I'm going to watch the prices and try and guess when the right time will be. There's never a right time to buy something. If you need it, and you save up. I've been saving for months already. Sometimes makes me laugh when people say, oh, it's okay for you, you can go and buy one of those. But what they don't realise, I think sometimes, is the thousands of hours that I've put into the channel. And yeah, just the amount of hard work. The money doesn't come out of nowhere, because I've got a day job as well, which is a good paying day job, but that's quite stressful as well. Or it can be from time to time. Obviously, I never talk about my day job on the channel because it's nothing to do with it. I do mention I'm a software developer now and again. Just looking at live stream comments, I'm not sure that 2024 will be that big of a leap in terms of resource requirements. I don't know, because remember, it's going to be rewritten from the inside out to be multi-threaded. So it'll be using more cores. But then saying that, Flight Sim isn't CPU bound, it's GPU bound. And probably memory bus bound as well. So I think most of it is down to the amount of RAM you've got on your graphics card. And yeah, just the grunt of your graphics card more than anything. I mean, I've shown the numbers on here before in the past. Well, just while we're flying across here, I'll give you a look at it. So if I go to Task Manager and pull up the performance, you can see the CPU is tootling along. Whoops, sorry. Tootling along, not doing much. It's running at 30%. The GPU isn't being stressed either, but the RAM is. So it's using 8 out of 10 gig of RAM. But the actual 3D processing, it's only running at a third. I cap it at 30 frames a second. Obviously this story changes enormously if I'm near a high fidelity airport. and if there are aeroplanes on the ground, and even worse if there is rain clouds and things that I'm flying through, or fog. That tends to murder the GPU. Buying RAM, no, that won't solve it, because we're talking about the RAM that's built into the GPU. We're not talking about the system RAM. If you go and look at that again, go and look at Task Manager, there's my system RAM. I've got 16 gig on board, and it's using, what is it, 12 of it or something, 10 and a half. You can see the stream of data coming in from the simulator as well, so there we go, it's starting to graph it accurately now, look. So it's hardly touching what I can get away with, so it's coming in at about 2 megasecond by the look of it. But I've got fibre to the house, so that's never going to be an issue. But yeah, so that's your system RAM, which is, you know, it's got lots of headroom there still. But the GPU itself, we're talking about the dedicated GPU RAM that's on the on the NVIDIA board, and it's using a lot of it already. Anyway, so yeah, if you've got less GPU RAM, it just means you're not going to be able to run Ultra, I guess. And again, with 24, I guess the bar for Ultra may be raised, you know, in terms of draw distance, because they're going to set it according to the hardware available now, or slightly ahead even. There's the whole, if anyone's been around long enough, you'll remember the story about, what was the video game called that they ended up judging all the graphics cards by? Crysis. Which they engineered the game in such a way that it was far beyond any hardware available at the time the game came out. You couldn't build a machine that could run it smoothly. And then for several years afterwards, whenever new graphics hardware came out, the question always was, how well would Crysis run on it? So that may well happen with 24, that they'll set the bar in the settings that the highest levels you can choose of things will be deliberately chosen just ahead of the curve. Because remember, the 5 series NVIDIA cards will probably be out by then, and they'll cost as much as a small car, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are released by then for the general public. Okay, so where are we? Let's have a look on the map. So we've left Adana behind, and we are now crossing the corner of the Mediterranean Sea. I just wondered if this had an actual name on this inlet, but it doesn't appear to, not on the Google map anyway. It's just part of the Med, I guess. So we're heading towards the Hatay VOR. Let me show you information for the VOR. So it has a range of 130 miles, so that'll be good to go for quite some time. So we're going to pass by Aleppo in a moment. So you'll have seen Aleppo in the news in Syria. We'll need to start climbing again in a moment, just looking at that map. So yeah, there's a hill coming. We need to be back at about 6,000 feet in pretty short order, so let's go do that now. So climbing at 1,000 feet a minute until we get to 6,000. So you can see it's on its way already. The sea looks quite calm down there, doesn't it? around the aeroplane, see what's going on. Fuel PSI looks quite low. Let's up the torque. Checking around, make sure everything looks okay, because the black square aircraft simulate things properly. And I think I've got failures on like normal rate, which means we could have something pack up on the airplane. So it does pay to keep looking around now and again, make sure everything looks okay. Okay. So we're about to make landfall on the opposite side of the bay here. So we're still in Turkey at the moment. Cross over the border in about another 40 miles time. So we're still climbing towards 6,000 feet. So we should just skim these hills. So yeah, I'm just reading the live stream chat. I don't use the rolling cache either. I never have done. I completely rely on the servers to feed me the data in time. My internet connection is fast enough that I'm much more likely to be waiting on the servers than them not being able to send anything to me quickly enough. Or you know, my ability to be able to take what they're giving me quickly enough. Okay, so we're just leveling out at 6,000. Should be good to clear these hills. So we're not turning until after the hills, so we should be okay. Is there an altitude mode in this that we can use to highlight hills nearby? Menu. Terrain. There we go. So yeah, you're getting the red showing up that's at the same height as us. Does that make sense? Can you see that? It's now highlighting. So if we were to descend, we're getting some yellow bits and pieces. We're happening to go through a much lower altitude, a little gap look. So those peaks are the same height as us, and those ones over there are, or further along. But we're good where we are. It's quite handy having that, isn't it? So the city we can see, just a bit further along, is Iskenderun. That's probably not how you pronounce it. I probably mangled that really badly. Iskenderun. There's a line of windmills on this hill, look. Very cool. It's a long runway down there, look. So, looking at our flight plan, if we zoom along here a bit, we could drop down to 4,000 feet for the entire rest of the journey. It's very flat, so we could drop to 3,000 to be honest, and we'd be perfectly okay. We might have to be a bit cautious. So let's drop down so we get to see some scenery on the ground a bit closer. So we'll drop down at 1,000 feet a minute to 3,000 feet. So we're about to pass straight over this airfield. Let's find out which one that is then. So that's Hatay Airfield. And then we're on towards Aleppo. So let's go and tune in the VOR at Aleppo, shall we? 11450. So we'll do it on the KNS 81st. 11450. And there we go, it's lit up, 52 miles to run. It's measuring our closing speed. We are shifting at the moment. Of course, we're going downhill. And we are over-torquing the engine. I hope I haven't just damaged it. Just noticed that. Let's go and have a little peek, see how much damage we've done. Nope, we're okay. That was lucky. So, 11450, 50 miles to run. We could do the same on here as well. So we picked up the Aleppo VOR. What's the range on it? So if we go show information for us please on the Aleppo VOR, it's 130 mile range, so we could pick it up from where we are. Should we do that just for a bit of fun? So the course is just, yeah, we're just switching legs to, you can see Aleppo has come up now on the TDS GTNXI. So if we line up the heading bug with the course and then put ourselves into heading mode, and then we'll change CDI mode over. So we're in VOR mode again, and then we can play games with getting the course lined up. So this is now reading the distance measuring equipment. So we've got a slight, the wind is behind us, but it's funny, we're holding a strange track, but that could be down to interference moving it around. So if we go back to nav mode, it's now going to track the VOR using the radios because we're in VLOC mode. It's estimating 10 minutes to get there. Am I flying over a no-fly zone? Let's go and have a look. I was then, very briefly. Well, I was in the controlled sector around the airfield. And I will be again when I come over the top of Aleppo International. It's obviously just a controlled sector. So it's not no-fly, it's just that's the tower has control over that sector. And this one, for example, you can see it's the Aleppo. From 2,000 to 15,000. It's interesting, isn't it? Because if you then come in even closer, you can see the different sectors to different heights, different classes of airspace. So there's the control tower. Aleppo Centre is covering that though. That's interesting. turn the sectors off, we don't have to see them. Keep getting these messages about the sectors all the time from the GDS. It can be a bit annoying sometimes. How are we doing in terms of systems? Just having another paranoid scan around to look at the various switches and gauges. The fuel PSI is still low, isn't it? The booster pump is on auto at the moment. Got tons of fuel. See that where we descended, look, the hills, the top of the hills have all gone red on the map because we've switched on terrain mode. Am I using a mod to make the scenery look so good? No. This is just the stock simulator scenery. But I am running in Ultra, remember. So that's going to make a difference to it. I've got no add-ons to do with how the simulator looks. So just out of interest, let's have a look. I'm running... what am I running? Navigraph, and that's it. So, where are we actually passing by? Let's go and look on the map. Tal Adeh Zazita is just to the north of us. Darat Iza is just over there, behind that hill. Sod's law, isn't it? There's a hill in there. Here it is. There's the hill, and there's Darat Iza. Down here. Okay, so we got quite a long drag out across the desert after Aleppo, so what I might do is climb after Aleppo and fly at altitude out towards Baghdad, so we'll take it up to 20,000 feet maybe, so we actually get to see something, you know, scenery in the distance, or 10,000 feet to begin with, and see how we go. But we'll have a look at Aleppo first, because obviously it's a significant city. So, while we're en route to Aleppo, let's pull up the information on it and have a read. Obviously, we know it from news reports about the problems in Syria. The capital of the Aleppo Governorate, the most populous governorate of Syria, with an estimated population of 2 million residents as of 2021. It was Syria's largest city until its population was surpassed by Damascus, the capital of Syria, the largest in Syria's northern governorates and also one of the largest cities in the Levant region. Aleppo is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. It may have been inhabited since the 6th millennium BC. Excavations at Tel as-Sauda and Tel al-Ansari, just south of the old city of Aleppo, show the area was occupied by Amorites by the latter part of the 3rd millennium BC. That is also the time at which Aleppo is first mentioned in cuneiform tablets unearthed in Ebla and Mesopotamia, which speak of it as part of the Amorite state of Yamhad, and note its commercial and military importance. So let's go and do this with the head tracking on then. So it's huge, look. Stretches out in all directions. Absolutely gigantic. Let's push our nose out over the dashboard of the aircraft so we can actually see. That looks like an old fort, doesn't it, that's been built upon in more modern times. That's Aleppo. It looks like a fantastic city, doesn't it? It's huge and sprawling. So obviously we're coming up over the top of the airfield here and we're going to change course slightly, but I think it's time to climb. So we'll have a look behind us at the city just as we leave. So yeah, Aleppo is enormous. Okay, time to climb. So let's go and set the target altitude. We said we'd initially go for 10,000, didn't we? If I can do this without messing it up too badly. So we'll climb at 1,000 feet a minute up to 10,000 feet and see how we get on. So hopefully we'll get some extra speed on at altitude. So the reason for doing it is obviously we've got this long stretch coming up. So should we switch back to GPS mode? So we've lost the VOR while we were over it. So we haven't changed direction yet. So I'm going to change back to GPS mode and go back to nav, which will make the aeroplane turn right. So just out of interest then, now we're leaving Aleppo behind, what range does the next VOR have? 130 miles, so we could pick it up fairly soon, 153 miles between the two. So we're going to go past Lake Assad soon, but before that, so we got So this is Sabkat Al Jabul. I'm not sure how the stress works on the words. So you can see we're climbing out towards 10,000. Just, I can't see any point of flying in the thick air low to the ground over the desert. We may as well climb to altitude. Up to a decent cruise altitude. So let's just keep an eye on the torque and the propeller speed. And obviously coming up to altitude, we've got the environmental control system on automatic, so it's still firm at 22 degrees. Outside temperature though will drop as we get higher. Yeah, just looking at the comments about it's a shame that about the problems in Aleppo or Syria. This whole part of the world is on the brink, isn't it, at the moment? It's such a shame. I will admit, when I was planning the route out, if you zoom out slightly, I did think about coming down through Lebanon and the West Bank and over Jordan and, you know, coming further south, but I thought I'd rather avoid those conversations about the places en route. So I'm going to kind of try and get to Baghdad, because Baghdad's obviously a hugely important city historically, so we'll have lots to talk about when we get a bit closer. Okay, so just while we're scooting along, I'll leave the view in the aeroplane here, so you get to see some things of interest. Could do with going a bit higher actually, couldn't we? There we go. And maybe a bit more this way, so you can see a bit more of the way we're going. And then you can see we've got like 40 minutes until the next VOR. So while we're flying along, I'm going to look up some information on Baghdad to tell you about it. So yes, we're obviously en route to Baghdad, but we've got a huge leg to fly, or two huge legs. So 150 miles out to this VOR, and then another 230 miles to Baghdad itself, and then we're going to land at an airfield just outside of Baghdad, but we'll have a circle around it before we do that. So, yeah, so this is the interesting story about Baghdad, I guess. During the Islamic Golden Age, well, that is linked apparently, so let's go and have a look. Yeah, between the 8th and the 13th century, Baghdad was the largest city in the world. Its population then peaked at more than 1 million people. The city was largely destroyed at the hands of the Mongol Empire in 1258, resulting in a decline that would linger through many centuries due to frequent plagues and multiple successive empires. Yeah, the ancient history of the place is fascinating. So it's thought that Baghdad grew because of its location. It was, you know, the trading routes along the Tigris. It had an abundance of water and in a dry climate. So the city of Baghdad quickly became so large it had to be divided into 3 judicial districts. I'm skimming pages and pages of Wikipedia article here to find things of interest to tell you. So we're within 1,000 feet of our target altitude, by the way. That's what the beep was. So yeah, this is the interesting bit for me. During the 8th and 9th centuries, Baghdad is known of as a centre of learning. So yeah, within a generation of its founding, Baghdad became a hub of learning and commerce. The city flourished into an unrivaled intellectual centre of science, medicine, philosophy and education. Especially with the Abbasid translation movement begun under the second Caliph al-Mansur and thrived under the 7th Caliph al-Mamun. Or the House of Wisdom was among the well-known academies. It had the largest selection of books in the world by the middle of the 9th century. Notable scholars based in Baghdad during this time include translator Hunayn ibn Ishaq, mathematician let me get this right, Khwarizmi, and philosopher al-Kindi. Although Arabic was used as the international language of science, the scholarship involved not only Arabs but also Persians, Syriacs, Nestorians, Jews, Arab Christians, and people from other ethnic and religious groups native to the region. So yeah, many of the 1001 Nights' Tales, widely known as the Arabian Nights, are set in Baghdad during this period. It would surpass even Constantinople in prosperity and size. So yeah, this is the bit kind of I was getting to. Among the notable features of Baghdad during this period were its exceptional libraries. Many of the Abbasid caliphs were patrons of learning and enjoyed collecting both ancient and contemporary literature. Although some of the princes of the previous Umayyad dynasty had begun to gather and translate Greek scientific literature, the Abbasids were the first to foster Greek learning on a large scale. Many of these libraries were private collections intended only for the use of the owners and their immediate friends, but the libraries of the caliphs and other officials soon took on a public or a semi-public character. So yeah, it grew and grew and grew for generations, and then 1258 the Mongols arrived and they decimated the city. Many quarters were ruined by fire, siege and looting. The Mongols massacred most of the city's inhabitants, including the Caliph, and destroyed large sections of the city. The canals and dikes forming the city's irrigation system were also destroyed. During this time in Baghdad, Christians and Shia were tolerated, while Sunnis were treated as enemies. The sack of Baghdad put to an end the Abbasid Caliphate. So a couple of 150 years later, Baghdad was sacked again by an outside force. So yeah, until about 1200 then, it was a seat of learning for hundreds of years. But then suddenly it got wiped out almost by the Mongols, Genghis Khan, and then got repeatedly wiped out every 100 years or so by different forces that arrived. It's a stunning story. It'd be great to get a book on it. So we're seeing some scenery aberrations in the simulator as we fly along now. It's a bit of a shame. I wondered if this might happen. So let's just check how we're doing in terms of... We're at 10,000 feet now. Should we take it up? So we'll have to have a play with the cabin pressurization system if we go above, was it 14? So let's take it up. This thing can go to 30,000. I've never done it, so it's going to be fascinating to see how it behaves. So 1,000 feet a minute up to 20,000 feet, and we're going to go and pressurize the cabin for it. So bleed is on auto, air conditioning is on, cabin temperature is set and it's at 22 degrees. So we'll watch these needles move as we climb. So you can see the pressurization is moving already. So the altitude inside the cabin is increasing. I'll leave the camera outside for a bit. So we have, Lindo says, hi Jonathan, I'm flying right behind you. So if I turn this around, I don't actually see him, unless he's lower down, of course. If I turn some labels on, maybe we'll see other people nearby. Aha, there you are. Is there anyone else out here? No, we're out here on our own. Or at least on this server we are. So we are just passing along Lake Assad. On our way to the Deir Zor VOR. So we're going to tune that in, 11700. Let's go and sort that out. We'll do it on this one as well, 117. There we go, 96 miles to run. We could do it on Nav2 as well. Switch it to active. Oh, it was already there. I'd already done it. So we can pull round the Omni bearing selector, and it will give us the bearing to the VOR from where we are right now. There we go. Let's go and zoom out. And that's giving us, that's interesting, I didn't realise this would give us a predicted altitude, sorry, a predicted point at which we reach the altitude that we've targeted. So we're running in GPS mode. I'm going to go and stretch my legs for a bit in a moment, so what we'll do is set this to see some of the landscape outside and to see the map here all at the same time, so it's not too boring for you guys. I'm not going to sit outside because it's a bit noisy, I think, although you could turn your sim down, couldn't you? What we could do is put LittleNavMap into minimal mode. and leave it up there so you can see how far we've got left to run. And then I could go to taskbar settings and hide it by default. There we go. We can actually check here by clicking on the aeroplane. Oh, it's going to show a load of dialogue, so we don't really want. Just wondering how we're doing on that climb. So we're at 15,000. Yeah, it's a lot more pleasant in the cockpit, isn't it? And you get the time to the next waypoint, which is quite cool. So I'm going to go and stretch my legs and leave it for a bit, and I'll be back in 5 or 10 minutes time, I imagine. So I'm just going to turn the microphone off while I disappear. I'm just turning the sound back on. I was just looking at the ECS system because we had a fault on the cabin pressure. I've just turned on the passenger oxygen. I think that's probably the root cause of it, but the altitude's not climbing. Although this is saying 3,000 feet, and that's about what it needs, look, so... So you set this for your... It just seems a bit low still, doesn't it? You've still got the cabin pressure warning. So why is it not pressurizing? So if I turn off the bleed, then we are increasing the rate. And it goes up towards maximum, basically. And yeah, it's putting the cabin pressure up now. Look, the altitude is coming up. Okay. That's better. That was a bit of a scare. So yeah, we still got the master caution is coming on because of that, because we're still showing it's showing a bleed off at the moment. If we put bleed on auto, what will happen to the pressurization in the cockpit? So if we say auto, will that drop? So the trouble is the rate comes back to 0. So we'll leave it off for the moment. So we're trying to pressurize the cabin basically. So it's increasing at the fastest rate we can. So we're just waiting for the altitude to come around to 20. So it's busy building up the pressure in the cabin. Have a look outside anyway while we're waiting for that to pressurize. There's an awful lot of nothing out there, isn't there? For a long way. So the altitude is slowly coming up. The cabin pressure sign is still on. And we're getting low cabin temperature now. So it's gone down to 7 degrees. If it goes below 10, it tends to come on, I think. So we're going to go and turn the heating on as well. So we want to go and... air conditioning is on. is going on with this? Good. Of course, we're not venting any air, which is probably not helping it. But that causes us to then lose pressure. Don't reckon much to their auto mode. Yeah, as soon as we stop bleeding air, we lose temperature. It's a real balancing act, isn't it? So we're up to 15,000 feet now in the cabin. It's slowly creeping up towards 20. If we continue to have problems with the temperature and the pressurization, I may well descend back down again. Slowly, so the rate is coming down, which is good. We're slowly getting closer to 20, so will this light go out when we get a bit closer? The trouble is we're getting colder and colder. We're down to 2 degrees and this isn't fun at all, is it? And if we put this on auto, you'd think on auto it would filter it for you. Because look, as soon as we pump the air through the system, then we start to warm up, because obviously the warm air from the engine comes through, but then we slowly lose altitude in here by the look of it. I wonder if that'd be good enough. Let's just watch this needle. No, it's slowly losing pressure. I'm going to go back down to 10,000 feet, you know. It's not worth the hassle. I think I need to go and read the book on how to operate the plane properly at altitude. So let's come back down fairly rapidly. 2,000 feet a minute, back down to 10,000 feet. So just need to be aware of about 260 knots is the speed limit for the type. Let's pull this back down then to 10,000. So yeah, we won't even need it. Leave the bleed on auto and we'll warm back up on the way down. It's just annoying. So we've got about a 40-minute drag until we get to Baghdad. On the way, let's go and have a look outside. And where are we in the world? How fertile the landscape is near the river. the Euphrates. It's amazing, isn't it? The difference our water supply makes. Yeah, it's absolutely stunning, isn't it, to see just how green and verdant the landscape is near the river. Of course, away from the river is a desert. So we're still getting cabin pressure warnings. We're still coming down back down to 10,000 feet, so hopefully they'll go away soon. The altitude in the cabin is dropping gently. It's coming back down towards 10,000 feet itself. Back up to 18 degrees internally. Okay, so we should be able to pick up the Baghdad VOR 11290. Let's try it. Or not, as the case may be. So what's the range on it? Let's have a look. "130 miles. But we're further than 130 miles out. So let's go and draw a range ring on that so we'll know how far away that is. There we go. And we're good with the cabin pressure now, so yeah, we'll just cruise along at 10,000 feet for the rest of the way. Doing about 240 knots in the air, 305 knots ground speed. We are shifting. We really are. But mind you, the torque is right up against, or not quite at the limit. Propeller speed, we're not running the propellers too fast. Fuel, we've got about a third of the tank left. So outside air temperature 14 centigrade, cabin temperature 21 centigrade. So we're back under control. So going to high altitude, it really didn't like it very much, did it? But that would be almost certainly be me mismanaging the environmental control system. It's a shame we've got this long drag out to Baghdad. The trouble is I want to do it in real time, so the videos all make sense in terms of time. So I don't want to go speeding us up. So 45 minutes to run. Having said that, look at that. The rate of change on there. Of course, now we're level, we're slowing down. So the ETE is changing. That makes sense. So ETE is estimated time en route, if you're wondering. And we've drop now, look, to 256 knots ground speed, where we were almost at 300 when we were in descent. And when we were up at 20,000 feet, we were doing another 40 knots in a straight line. So that has impacted us quite a lot in terms of speed over the ground. Let's zoom out. So we can see Baghdad out there now, look, on the map. So we're almost over the border now between Syria and Iraq. That's the Euphrates River, where you can see all of the, it's way off into the distance, look. It's amazing, isn't it? It just shows you how much difference the water source makes to the landscape near it. It's incredible. So, let's go and set the camera up so you can see the landscape and the map. It'd be interesting to see how close we get. This doesn't get, oh it does, it gives us 189 miles down here to the waypoint. Okay. So we got this 40-minute drag out to Baghdad. Shouldn't take too long. We're just about to cross the border into Iraq. I think I need to go and get a drink. I started coughing, a tickly throat. So I'll be back in a bit. Bear with me. Okay, I'm back. So we have about 27 minutes according to the flight plan until we reach downtown Baghdad. Shouldn't take too long. Well, it'll take 27 minutes, won't it? This airspeed. So you can see we have now picked up the VOR in Baghdad, 112.90. The distance measuring equipment is counting down. So let's go and switch over VOR1 to 112.90. If we put the heading bug on the same direction we're going, which it already is, if we go heading mode, then change the CDI over, change the course to the radial we wish to approach on, just about there, and then go nav mode. We're now flying following the radial. Obviously at this distance you can see it's moving around, so the airplane's gonna obviously move around as well. So not a good idea to use nav mode on VOR at this distance, so I'll just go back to heading mode for the moment and we can keep an eye on it. So, looking at this, there isn't any wind showing up. So if as we get closer, obviously this will get more accurate. But we're still 100 miles away from the VOR station. You can see it wobbling around. Obviously we have the advantage. We can see the GPS track as well. So looking at LittleNavMap, if we just pull back up the normal window layout, so default, and we'll pull up the altitude graph as well, and here we are approaching Baghdad. We could drop down to a much lower altitude now. So say 5,000 feet to begin with. So we'll go and drop the altitude pre-selector to 5,000, arm that altitude, command it to come down at say 500 feet a minute. Actually, let's increase that. 1,000 feet a minute. Let's see how it affects the ground speed. So we're slowly climbing, like 255 knots, 256. But trouble is, as you descend, you're getting into the thicker air, which will slow us down. Just opened the map by accident, didn't mean to do that. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, part of the attraction of including Baghdad in this journey is it's such a storied city in history. It's been taken over repeatedly over the last 800 years. Yeah, it would be fascinating to get a book about its history, to kind of read some of the stories. Especially about the libraries. So between, what did we say earlier, between 800 and 1200, it had yeah, the biggest libraries in the world, and it was the seat of learning. And most of that was lost when the Mongols arrived. in about 12:58, was it? Whoa, look at this huge flat area. Let's go and have a look on the map to find out about that. So that's Thurthar Lake. Presumably, I wonder if it dries out a lot, because it's on flat land, isn't it? So it's going to be incredibly shallow. I wonder how much it varies during the year. So dropping down 7,500 feet. Ground speed 263 knots. "20 minutes to run at this speed until we're in downtown Baghdad." "89 miles to run." So let's go and have a little look then. So I was planning on flying out of Baghdad out towards this Khan Bani Sad airfield, which is more attuned to our sort of aircraft. But there is a small airfield right here, Kastelorizo Mill. So maybe that's the better option for us. If we go and explore the city, that might be better actually, yeah. So if I set that as the destination. So we're not going to fly into the international airport, but we're going to go and have an explore of Baghdad before we finish. So we put the head tracking back on. It's a bit more natural, isn't it? So down to 6,000 feet now. Within 1,000 feet of our target, that's what the beep was. "18 minutes to run." Obviously the speed is going to bleed back off when we get to 5,000 feet, so it will make the estimated time en route go wrong. It will slowly climb back up until it equalizes. So seeing we've got this great big VOR here, we could actually use that using the KNS-80 to give ourselves an approach. So let's find out what the weather is doing here. So 330 degrees, 3 knots. So yeah, we could come in runway 27. So the way you do this is you try to do this as accurately as you can. So I'll prepare it before we get there so I can talk about it. So we're going to measure the distance from the VOR to the end of this runway. So we want 48 degrees, and we want 1.4 miles away. Okay? So what you do is you get this KNS-80 computer over here, and we're going to tune this. This is already tuned into Baghdad. We're going to change its mode though. So it's in RNAV at the moment. That's good. So you can change with the data button between frequency, radial and distance. So if I change it to radial, I want the radial to be how far away from the actual beacon do I want to project it to be. So we want 1.4 nautical miles, and we want it on the radial of 48 degrees magnetic. So we're going to go and change the radial to 48. And then we're going to go and change the distance to, was it 1.4? That was the throttle glitching, wasn't it, we just heard? So 1.4, okay. So what we've done is programmed into the KNS-80 a virtual VOR, essentially. So when we get closer to Baghdad, I'll be able to show you that. But what we can do is then change the HSI over to use RNav, and it will use the configuration from the KNS-80. So we'll get a localizer that doesn't exist. We'll essentially get a localizer here. So if I was to draw a line on the map here, we'll get that appear on the HSI. So, you know, obviously we'll have to change the course to 270 degrees. So if we do that, if we just go and we're in heading mode at the moment, so we can actually go and do this now. So if we say nav, and we want RNav, okay, and we'll go and change the direction to 270 degrees on the course. Okay, so relative to the direction we are going at the moment, we'll need to double back on ourselves and then some, which is exactly what we're saying here. Look, when we get to the other side of the airfield, it'll make more sense. But we'll be able to use this to fly into that airfield, and the localizer, obviously it's going to be visual anyway, it's just something to play with. An academic toy to play with is to use the KNS-80 to project a VOR to make a localizer where there isn't one. So Mr. Bullseye is asking if I'm doing everything by the book. No, I'm not. I'm changing aeroplanes very often. Obviously I'm not using ATC either, because it's more fun to talk about the route and to talk about the places that we're visiting. So earlier on we were talking about the history of Baghdad and, you know, its ancient history. It had some of the biggest, well, it had the biggest libraries in the world. And yeah, and the fighting over the centuries has wiped it out repeatedly. It's such a shame. But we are attempting to look after the aeroplanes that we fly along the way. We're not trashing them. So for example, if we go and look in here, we've got engine conditions still 100%. We've been, you know, very mindful of torque and prop speed and keeping on the fuel, and so we should be good. It's just interesting to see different parts of the world, isn't it, in the simulator? So we're seeing areas we don't normally see, or that I don't normally see, I should say. It's a shame that the tiling isn't quite as good as it might be here and there. But I guess it depends on the, you know, the data that's available to Asobo from the various mapping companies. I do need to go and read the book on this aeroplane a bit more though, because if we use this one on another flight soon, because obviously we saw when we tried to go to 20,000 feet, we ran into a bit of a corner with the environmental control system where we couldn't pressurize. Maybe it was because I didn't pressurize in time. But I turned off the bleed, which allowed us to compress the oxygen in the cockpit, but then in doing so we lost temperature. So I need to have a read about that. You know, about how the strategy you should use to control the environment inside the aircraft. Okay, 12 minutes to run, 48 miles until we are in downtown Baghdad. So let's put that final airfield into our flight plan. So if we are going to land at this small one, it's OR0S. So back out of here, flight plan, add waypoint, OR0S. Does it not know it? That surprises me. OR0S. Let's see if Navigraph has it. That might be why. It's not there. That's a shame, isn't it? I've just realised in the other flights I've done, I've used Volanta and I forgot to start it. So let's go and see what we can do to at least put the flight in place. Get Navigraph out of the way, pull up Volanta. So we're in N695Z, upload an aircraft image for it. So we got the... I haven't got a very good picture of the... Okay, I'm going to show you how I do pictures. So we'll use that. I'm going to press the Windows key and print screen. Then I'm going to open Photoscape. Paste it in, crop it to the original photo ratio. That will do. This is the TBM 850. Then in Volanta we can upload the image, and there it is. Flight number W05. Add origin. We took off from Kastelorizo. So flight plan, copy the route into the clipboard. So LGKJ. And we're going to Baghdad, but we're going to OR0S. Let's see if it's got it. No, it hasn't. So we might end up doing this after all then. So after all of that messing around, what was the code for that one? OR0A. Am I typing these codes in wrong? If I put the name of this airport in, I wonder if it will come up. Quasar Tal Mill. Okay, it has a very different code. That's good then, at least we can use it. Add flight plan. Enter a text route. So there's our route. So at least we've got the last bit recorded in Volanta. Okay. So we should be seeing the city fairly soon. We are... cancel out of there. Back out of here. Go back to the map. Zoom in. So we're 7 minutes out from downtown Baghdad. 28 miles to run. So, Mr. Bullseye says, thank you for all the videos. I've been finding them very helpful since taking the plunge into Flight Simulator this past Steam sale. Finally, after many years of indecision. It's great fun, isn't it? I just like going flying around the world, looking at places. I like, obviously, tinkering with the different aeroplanes as well. But yeah, the opportunity this gives you to actually go and see parts of the world that otherwise you would never have seen is great fun. So, NM Flyer says back to Baghdad should be in an A10 or an F-16. I think the people there have been through enough without being shot to pieces by... well, I'm not even going to go there. As I said earlier, the history of Baghdad is one of the most fascinating stories in the world, in recorded history. They've lost so much here over the centuries, repeatedly. Carlos says, thank you for the videos. My last flight sim was back in 2004, 2005. Started back last week and using the videos as a reference for the newer version of flight sim. You should be seeing the city fairly soon. We're 17 miles out. So if we make a turn, so obviously you can see the lights from the runway over there from the international airport. We're going to fly into the centre of the city. Yeah, so we're heading straight across. And we're going to put air tracking on now. And turn off the autopilot in a moment. So autopilot off. I am now in control. And we're going to descend down and have a little look around the city. So at various times in the ancient past, this was the most populous city in the world. I guess they can't confirm that. It's just based on reports that were written at the time and, you know, diaries or journals of various theologians. So there's the international airport. This is the main part of the city stretched out in front of us over here. Let's descend down a little, see if there's any 3D structures.
Sync rate. Sync rate. Pull up. Pull up.
I wonder what that
Pull
was.
up. Pull up.
It's a huge city, isn't it? You can see how it was once the most populous city in the world. I think the thing that always struck a chord with me was the libraries that were lost. So yeah, most of the knowledge of the ancient world was held here once upon a time. And they very much took over from the Greeks in terms of, you know, the acquisition and...
Obstacle ahead. Obstacle ahead. Obstacle ahead.
Let's inhibit tours now, just make it shut up. Let's go and fly along the river. Might give us a bit better view. Vast, isn't it, this city? It's similar to some of the other big cities of the world. You can imagine, well, in ancient times this would have been incredible, I guess. Obviously it isn't as big as it has become. is still amazing though, just how big it stretches off in all directions, look. Okay, should we go and find out about landing somewhere then? So we're just circling back towards the airfield we were programmed in on. So you can actually see, look, the localizer has come alive on the RNAV. So it's we're just off to the left of the approach for it. So let's slow down. We're 5 miles out. So this was using the KNS-80 over here to project us a localizer. For a runway that doesn't have one. So we're now 4 miles out. We're losing speed. So let's cut the throttle back a bit more. So is this the runway directly in front of us here? It is indeed. So we'll see how we get on with landing there then. Flaps down. So there's the international airport just over there, look.
$500.
Obviously this KNS-80 trick doesn't actually give us a glide slope, but we can do it visually. Obviously if you couldn't do it visually, you could use distance and known airfield elevation to figure out, you know, how high you should be at various distances from the airfield. Drifted a bit further than I really wanted to there, but we're fine. We have landed. It's not a very well modelled airfield, but oh well, you can't have everything, can you? No doubt if we'd gone into the international airport it would have been wonderfully modelled. I didn't think we had any business being in the international airport with a tiny little turboprop. don't think they've got any... Oh, there is a taxiway coming, I think, to get through to the parking area over there. It's not modelled very well, is it? But we'll make the best of it. Okay, parking brake is on. So we need to think through what we need to do to shut the airplane down so we can cut the fuel to the engine. Should watch that happen from outside. Very cool. Okay, well that's busy spinning away in the wind. Obviously you can see lots of warnings are coming on because we're not generating electricity anymore. So let's go and turn various things off. So the gyros can come off. The lights can all come off. The ignition can be switched off now if I can click on it. The fuel pump is still trying to do stuff, so we're going to stop that. Fuel selector can stay on auto, to be honest. The... oh well, it seems frozen for a moment there. So bleed can come off, air conditioning can come off, the transponder can be go off now. If we want to do all this properly, I'm going to do this without the head tracking. So, because this is the black square aeroplane, you can actually go around and turn all these things off properly, as you would in the real thing. And, you know, they'll all behave as they should. And it will remember the state of things. So you can hear various things switching off for any aeroplane. It's quite cool, isn't it? You can hear things winding down. So we want the autopilot master can go to off. The radio master can now go to off. Turn the generator off. Turn the source off, and it goes cold and dark. We can open the door, or unlock it and then open it. And then get the foot pegs out. And there we go. Okay, so that's the next leg of the world trip done. I better go and do a blog post to go with it and include everything in it, so we can see in Volanta, we can review our flight. Not that we recorded very much of it in the end, just the last little bit. But we can see the landing there. And it came in at 96 feet per minute. Yeah, we were floating for far too long over the runway, to be honest. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed that. So that was leg 5 of our round the world trip. I imagine the next leg is going to take us out. I guess we go Q8 just for a bit of interest. Down to Bahrain and Qatar, through the UAE, Abu Dhabi. Yeah, so we can just follow the coast down, I guess. Once we get to Oman, I guess we jump across to Pakistan, maybe. and then continue on across India. I'm really looking forward. I might go head further north to hit the corner of Nepal so we can see some of the mountains, and through Bhutan, and then it'd be fascinating. Or do we carry there'd be a big ocean crossing though to jump across to Malaysia, wouldn't it? I wonder if we carry on though across Thailand and Vietnam and Laos, we could end up in the Philippines somehow. The big question is how we get, once we get to the Pacific Ocean, do we go the northern route along Japan and touch on Russia and jump across to Alaska, or do we go? I'm quite keen on going island hopping across the Pacific Islands, because then we could carry on down in a straight line through Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, along the coast of Australia, out to New Zealand, and then cut back and go island hopping, and then into South America, and then follow up through Panama and Mexico up through the US. So it'd be a bit of a detour, or maybe go straight line it across from Nicaragua over to Cuba and then Florida, and then up over the top of Newfoundland and Greenland, Iceland, and then back to where we started. So yeah, we'll think about it on the way, but for the moment we have arrived. We've only done that far so far. There's 5 flights, 5 quite long flights. We've arrived in Baghdad, so the next leg will probably take us down towards Qatar, maybe. We'll see. Anyway, I will see you all again soon. Take care. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and this aircraft lives to fly another day. See you soon.